Hello there. Sorry about the confusion.
I am sorry for the confusion and misinterpretation we had vis-a-vis the word ping.
I'm trying to figure out what background I want. Do you want to like shake out the kind of ping confusion that I sowed and that you had to
Um,
unfortunately reap?
oh, that does remind me of the third episode of this Netflix called documentary I watched yesterday, which was called So What You Reap, but I'm not going to talk about it.
Thank you.
It is the TikTok dance cult, which sounds funny, but it's actually extremely dark.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Look right into your podcast app. You'll see there's a discourse happening. Is this book a masterpiece or problematic? One's a lifelong diehard fan, the other's a first-time reader. Both are really smart and funny and attractive. Sweet feather, sweet feather. Talking trends and hierarchy. Sweet feather, sweet feather. Focus on their body. Sweet feather, sweet feather. What do they mean by all American? Sweet feather, sweet feather. No sex, just titillation.
I would love to do How Are You? And you had family time, and how's the rest of your visit?
Yesterday was a chock-a-block full day. Did we go to an 1880s fake town? Yes. Did we pan for gold? Yes. Did we ride an old-timey steam locomotive? Yes.
I wish you could have coordinated the time better and done that when we read Spring Fever. It would
Yeah,
have
no,
been
believe.
You're like, I'm literally in Walkersville.
Yeah. There were no sexy carnies of any kind. I did see a furry, which in my head I was like, oh, that's just a person in a fox suit. And then the child, I would say maybe 8 years old, next to me, not part of the family, part of a different family, goes, oh, it's a furry. And I was like, wait, kids know what furries are now?
I don't know if I know what furries are. I understand furries is adults that dress up in costumes of furry animals, and that this is a community, and that there is a sexual context or component to this. Is that always the case? Is it sometimes sexual, some not? What's the sexual nature of it?
Great question. In my mind, and this is, I'm not a member of the furry community.
You're not the representative.
No. I'm not even, well, no, sorry. Not only am I not a representative, I'm not even a member.
So you're just a fan. You're a supporter, a sort of donor, a funder. You make the costumes.
A financial backer is what I kind of think.
So what is the answer?
Oh, I don't know. I'm not knowledgeable.
No, but what was your, like,
my impression is it's always sexual.
okay.
And this furry,
Which is why you were like, why would a kid know that?
Yes.
Okay.
And this furry was wearing a sash with the colors of the trans flag on it. So it was like not just a furry, but it seems to be a trans furry, which I'm very pro. But I was also like, huh.
Oh, you heard it here first, folks. Robert Marks thinks only cis people can be furries and trans people can't be furries.
No, they thought only cis people could be furries, and they've learned. And they're growing and they're changing. And isn't that beautiful? Isn't language interesting?
And aren't we lifelong learners?
Aren't we all lifelong learners?
Well, okay, I'm going to have to Google later. I just feel like I thought that was something I was going to be able to kind of get through life and not ever have to Google. But
oh, I don't think you do have to.
Good.
Then we went to the Monterey Bay Aquarium.
Famous aquarium.
Have you been?
I mean, I've never been inside.
Are you an aquarium girl?
I mean, I'm a shark girl. But I
Do
have.
you
I
want to see
always
a
did.
hammerhead?
Wait, they have a hammerhead? Seriously? How big is that? No, how can that be ethical? How big are we talking? How much water is this swimming
Thank you
in?
so much for asking. So our friend, Harry the Hammerhead, which I named him, we don't know his name or pronouns or anything, but that's what I think.
Do we know his biological sex?
No.
Is he DMAB?
No, we don't know.
You're literally just calling him? Wow. Continue.
They're in what we call the big tank, which has 2 sea turtles. We've got so many dolphin fish, which you may know as dorado, or when cooked, mahi mahi. There were so many bluefin tuna. Sorry, yellowfin tuna, Robert. But it's a great tank.
I literally only care about the shark, and you didn't
Oh.
answer my main question, which is how big is it that it's ethical to have a hammerhead in
It's
there, and how big,
huge.
and also, how huge, and also how big is the shark? Like, I got a picture of this.
Okay, shark is probably Pardo sized.
No, Pardo's 5 feet tall.
Okay.
It could have been 5 feet. I just was wanting
I
it a
don't
little
think
bigger.
it's. Yeah, I think you present as taller than 5
I
feet.
know.
Wait, are you literally 5 feet tall?
Depending on who you ask, I'm between 5'2.5" and 5'3.5".
Oh. This hammerhead, I think, was much taller than Pardo. I'm sorry.
Okay. So like Pookaroo size?
Yeah. Oh, that's much easier. Thank you. Duh. I should have used a reference that we all have. Hammerhead was Pookaroo size, and I would say the tank was like immeasurably large. Like it was room size.
A room could be 9 feet. A room could be. No, I'm serious, Robert.
I know.
This is
I'm
like
more
literally
frustrated
the
with
only-
myself than with you. I should have
No,
asked someone how
no,
capacious
let's
the
not.
tank was.
Let's collaborate on solutions. We have the internet available at our fingertips. Let's just find out right now because it's important. Okay, Monterey Bay Aquarium hammer. I assume they're going to say on their website because probably a lot of people have this question. Okay, meet the scalloped hammerhead. Ooh, this is the description. With that wide, thick head shaped like a double-headed hammer, it's easy to identify a hammerhead shark. They're not wrong. Well, that's interesting. Oh, they're just telling us about this species. Because when it says size, it says up to 14 feet. Like they're just talking about the shark in general.
Yeah.
So where can I learn about the animals like they have and not just general animals? That's actually really confusing. Hold on. Okay, here's a section, caring for their animals' welfare. Maybe this is going to explain.
I don't think that's going to explain.
No, it just says they feed them by hand. Not helpful.
Oh, I didn't know that. I'm on Wikipedia now. So it's not the kelp forest. Is it the open sea wing?
90 feet.
Okay. How do you feel about that, kind of size-wise, for your single hammerhead?
I don't feel good. A hammerhead belongs in an ocean.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm not an expert. So I'd rather do more research before having a comment because I'm sure there's a lot of good scientists and people at Monterey Bay Aquarium that have designed this thoughtfully. So I'd love to give them the benefit of the doubt. And I'm gonna learn and then I'm gonna comment.
Okay. I'm just gonna give you some additional information that hopefully makes you come down a little less hard on the Monterey Bay Aquarium people because they're going through a hard time right now.
Oh, why?
One of their prized otters, Kit, recognizable from her silvery face, and she is the longest sea otter in the sea otter habitat. She is going back to Detroit because that is where she was from. She was here to be a surrogate mother to some sea otter pups.
Are you crying?
I'm not crying.
Wow.
I'm not. I mean, when I say I love sea otters, sea lions, and seals, I love them. I love
Wow.
them.
Wow, and I love that I can still learn new things about you.
So we're at the aquarium yesterday, and basically no one else wanted to spend as much time at the sea otter habitat as I did. And so I would say I probably spent 25 minutes to half an hour just myself, just watching those otters play and frolic. They're the puppies of the sea.
That's very, very cute. I'm really that's beautiful. And that's beautiful that you had that experience. I'm happy for you.
Thank you.
And
it's just hard to say goodbye to Kit. And I know we're not saying goodbye to Kit. I know that Kit is going to Detroit, which is in many ways her home. It's just like, it's hard to have someone you love move across the country or across the world from you.
Has that ever happened to you a different time?
I was doing a segue into the book, but
oh, I just meant like, has maybe a friend that you ever lived in the same place with ever moved across the country or something like this, or to even another country?
I'm thinking carry the two. No, all my friends live right here with me.
Do me a favor. Tell me if you did or did not see the cover of our today's book, which is Sweet Valley High, number 38, Leaving Home. No,
I
I was gonna text you and say,
I
please don't see
didn't.
it.
No,
Oh,
my big smile is that I didn't.
thank you. I thought it was a naughty smile, but it was
No, I'm not being
I
naughty
was,
at all. I'm
I was
being very
actually
rule
good.
follower. Rule follower
Yeah.
Robert's Rules of Order, etc.
Thank you. Thank you for not looking at it.
We gotta jump in.
Yeah, do you have a 6-word review?
Anxiety abounds, but nothing changes. Ugh.
Ooh. Okay, I'm excited because I feel like this is suggesting to me that this is one of those ones where we really read it different.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait.
Anxiety abounds, but nothing changes.
Ugh. I mean, this book, the A plot and the B plot are very, very anxiety provoking for me.
Yeah.
And by the end of both the A plot and the B plot, nothing has changed. So it's like, what? But maybe I'm so activated by it because it reminds me that my anxiety actually is serving no purpose. But it's just like we had a whole book, everyone is so fraught, all of us, and then like, by the end of it, it's like, wait, so what is materially or emotionally different from the beginning of the book? Nothing.
Yeah, it's like different for me reading it as a kid versus an adult because as an adult I remember what happened, but as a kid I remember especially the B plot tearing me up with stress. Yeah. Okay, it's 4 words. Only virgins deserve scholarships.
Yeah. No further explanation needed.
Yeah. I'll go with that.
Pretty self-explanatory.
Cliffhanger, please.
Okay. Dedicated listeners remember that in Rumors, there was this completely bogus moment where Elizabeth's like, Regina, tell me more about Switzerland again. I love to hear you talk about Switzerland. I've always loved to hear you talk about Switzerland. Tell me more about the boarding schools you didn't attend in Switzerland. And sorry, I know that I said nothing, I had nothing to say, but part of what is confusing fundamentally for that is we are kind of sold that Regina had a very bad time in Switzerland, because she was spending all of her time in the hospital getting these treatments. And yet she is regaling Liz with all of these stories. It's like, what's going on here? So Regina has provided a boarding school brochure or pamphlet. It is the Interlaken School. Elizabeth is looking over it and she says, thanks, Regina. I really appreciate your showing it to me, but there's no way my parents could afford something like this. Wait a minute, Liz. There are all kinds of scholarships and grants you can get. Really, you should look into it. If I were in your place, I wouldn't give up until I'd looked at all of the possibilities. Regina's words filled Elizabeth with new hope. It was senseless to give up so quickly. Perhaps what she should do would be to write to the headmaster and find out exactly what her options were.
The headmaster who Robert hopes is hot.
Yeah, and it turns out we never find out.
Yep, sadly.
We meet several people in this book. One of them is hot. Her blue-green eyes blazed with excitement. Imagine living in Switzerland, immersing yourself in another culture, traveling around Europe on holidays, studying creative writing at the Interlaken School. She turned to the list of faculty members and read the headmaster's name, Alex Humel. Suddenly, she couldn't wait to get home. It was worth a try, Elizabeth decided. The next day, she would write a letter to Alex Humel. Oh, Regina, you're wonderful. Maybe there is a chance after all. Will Elizabeth leave Sweet Valley to study in Switzerland? Find out in Sweet Valley High number 38, Leaving Home.
Already I have 20 things to say. Number 1, I just remembered something stressed me out about us doing this record is I was like, okay, Robert's going to be saying Switzerland a lot of times. Number 2, I literally just remembered and I Googled it to see if I imagined it that I, in high school, like, this is going to sound insane. In high school, I like at some point, I guess, considered or maybe even applied or thought about going to a boarding school called Interlaken in Michigan. What? In Michigan.
Oh yeah, Interlaken, the one Julie went to.
That sounds right. And because my sisters went to the camp, the summer camp. Anyhow, so I just remember that. And my third thing to say is, I have a thought on the whole thing about Regina. You mentioned that Liz is getting all this from Regina, but even Regina, it's like not direct experience. Like Regina's telling her about her friends went to these boarding schools. So one thing that could show us is maybe the like multiple degrees of remove from reality, where it's like even in the book, Elizabeth acknowledges to other people, or she acknowledges in her own self that like she has created a fantasy around this Switzerland thing in the school. So what is the fantasy based on? Already this other layer of mediation of Regina's interpretation, or we don't know if she ever even set foot in one of them.
We're playing Swiss boarding school telephone, basically. The classic part of games.
Now we summarize plot. Would you like the A plot or the B plot?
I hate the A plot.
You would be within your rights to hate the A plot. Yeah, I hate it too. It's fucking stupid. But anyway.
My problems with it are more than just its stupidity.
Yeah, me too. My problems with it are more than just its stupidity. So I'll do the A plot, you do the B plot.
Okay.
Why don't you do B plot first, actually?
Okay. This is actually just a lovely, very quick thing. Winston Egbert, Starch King, king of my heart, body, and soul, love of my life. He has received a lottery ticket from his father, and he has decided either in reality or for the bit of it all, and I actually love it either way, that this is the winning lottery ticket. So he invites everyone over to a get-rich-quick party where they will watch TV and see the lottery numbers revealed, and he will win the lottery in front of all of his friends. He's at the grocery store with new girlfriend Maria Santelli, and they notice an old man wearing a very similar navy jacket to Winston's navy jacket. We get a classic navy jacket switcheroo. Winston takes the old man's navy jacket. Get rich quick party is happening. Oh no, wherever is my lottery ticket? I cannot find it. Well, but I can't tell them that I lost the lottery ticket. I thought I put it in my jacket. Wait, this isn't my jacket. It's the old man's jacket, which I already knew. But it does have a lottery ticket in it. Well, I guess I'll use that lottery ticket. It's not like it's going to win. Oh, wait, it does win. What are we going to do? Winston has won the lottery in front of all of his friends with an ill-begotten ticket. He then kind of finds the old man, goes to the old man's house, realizes the old man has been playing the lottery for a long time, but is not following the numbers, so didn't even really look at his ticket and has no idea he won. What will Winston do? Will he keep the money, or will he give the lottery ticket and the winnings back to the old man? He gives the lottery ticket and the winnings back to the old man. The old man is truly lovely and beautiful about it. Happy ending.
One point of just clarification or like thing, the thing that like he realizes the old man hasn't been playing in a while, so hasn't checked his ticket. But it's like, if he had checked his ticket, he still wouldn't have known that he won because he would have checked Winston's ticket. Like, unless he's like copying down the number somewhere every time, so he would know the number was different. But like, no, he would have. So that was a weird chemistry test thing, but we can whatever.
It was a little chemistry testy. I thought that was just to cover our bases in case he had looked at the ticket and kind of had a general memory of what some of the numbers are, because we get this tiny moment where Liz actually does look at the ticket, realizes that the first three numbers are a stand-in for Jeffrey Franch's birthday, July 12th, mark your calendars. Does that make him a Leo? No, that makes him whatever's before a Leo.
Sorry, she looks at Winston's initial ticket, like his actual ticket, before the switch, and she clocks the numbers. Sorry, what's the birthday?
July 12th. He is a Cancer.
Cancer.
Oh, you knew that quick.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Okay, that's the B plot.
Yeah. I have a lot of opinions about the B plot, but we'll get to it.
Okay.
Okay, the A plot. God help us, the A plot. Okay. Liz decides to, because she learns of this scholarship opportunity, she decides to, and Robert is performatively yawning.
I will say, you know when you performatively yawn and then it turns into a real yawn? That did happen. So I'm really sleepy.
Which is the literal definition of performative, of like doing the performance creates the fact. So, you know what I mean? It's not just performative, like you're performing. It's like you're literally performing from the linguistic, pragmatic sense of creating social facts in the world. Okay. And a yawn is a social fact. Elizabeth is going to apply for this scholarship, which is going to enable her to potentially go to this interlocking program for the summer after junior year and all of senior year. Pretty long time to do creative writing thing. And she had this whole like inspiration fantasy of she's going to go there and be inspired. And it's this sort of romanticized vision and all of this. And she's, as you can imagine, being beyond neurotic about the whole thing, which gets escalated when it turns out there's like a home interview component by the local executor of the trust that is the benefactor of the scholarship. We'll talk about that. This guy comes to do a home visit and talk to everyone at the like family and school, and which is so strange. And Liz is losing her shit over it, and like telling everyone how to act and everything. And Jess and Steven decide to like sabotage it by multiple ways that we'll get into. But basically they quote unquote destroy the like good reputation that Elizabeth has otherwise garnered. And they make it that she doesn't get the scholarship. She gets upset. They feel bad. They go, Jess and Steven go apologize to the scholarship people and tell them the truth of like, we sabotaged her. She's actually good and not a slut. And they're like, okay. So they go over to the Wakefield's house and say like, Liz, you actually can have the scholarship. And then she realizes she doesn't want it because she can get inspiration right here at home and they're too snobby. Meanwhile, she's been very much doing the Liz thing of like ignoring what other people are saying to her. Like Jess and Enid and Jeffrey all directly expressed to her some of their concerns of like, they're going to miss her, or has she thought about all of it, or like they're sad for themselves about it or whatever. And she 100% ignores them and decides to like lean in even more and is like, oh, Jeffrey will understand that I want to leave if I obsess about it even more and more. And then Enid and Jeffrey get together to make her a scrapbook, and that leads to her thinking they're like cheating together because they're seen together a couple times. It's like so fucking stupid. In the end, they give her the scrapbook, and that's basically the A plot.
That's the A plot. Interlochen in Michigan, Jewel did go to. It's spelled like Interlaken here.
Mm-hmm.
What's confusing is that Interlaken in Switzerland is actually spelled differently. The Switzerland one is Interlaken, and this is Interlaken.
Oh, that's so interesting. So I bet you Sweet Valley based it on the Michigan one and assumed it was how it's spelled. That's funny.
Yeah. And I mean, in my mind, it's like, why didn't they just check? But it's like, actually, I guess they would have had to go to the library and get like a atlas or something. And who can be bothered to do that?
Go through the microfiche machine? No.
So
for the Gen
featuring.
Zs, microfiche is
good luck.
When you used to have to get information, you had to go to the library. What's a library? It has kind of four walls. They have books in there. What's books? It's sort of like internet on paper.
Okay.
Now, when you had to go through an old newspaper, they had this thing called a microfiche machine. Forget LexisNexis, okay? You had to take
which Gen Zers also don't know what it is, but continue.
Well, whatever. There was this machine that you had to have to like put your eyeball on this thing, like be like to look at a newspaper. Oh.
Microfiche or even fiche, that should be an insult. Like we should bring that back as slang for like, I just feel like if you're like antiquated and like boring and hard to deal with, you're like, you're a microfiche. Stop being such a microfiche. It needs workshopping.
Mm-hmm. No, but it could be something. It could be something. Do you want to guess the taglines?
I wish it were something like, will Jess thrive with Liz in Switzerland? But it's not, because it's going to be like, will Elizabeth start a new life in Switzerland or something?
It's, can Jessica find a way to stop Elizabeth from leaving Sweet Valley?
I wish it were, first of all, I obviously wish Switzerland were right there on the cover. I also wish it were less, I mean, that's accurate to the book. That is what the book is literally about. So good tagline.
Back?
A devious plot, ... a lucky ticket, dot, dot, dot. A
Those
competitive
are
scholarship, dot, dot, dot.
a competitive scholar.
When you die, only young Robert Marks is picking a book and the back goes, a competitive scholarship, dot, dot, dot. And they're like, oh my God, a competitive, let me read about it. A novel that centers on a competitive scholarship, dot, dot, dot. How exciting to someone like me.
3 writing samples, dot, dot, dot. No, it's separate ways, dot, dot, dot. Now, for the cover, I would like to do the thing that we only do once in a while, which is I ask you, what would you expect the cover to be?
Okay, this is what I would expect the cover to be, but only because these covers are a mindfuck, not because I think this would be a good cover for the book, okay?
Okay, but if you have a good cover for the book, we can hear that too.
Okay, what I expect is like Liz standing with a suitcase, kerchief around her neck, like literally leaving home.
Like Runaway, kind of.
Yeah. And I think a good thing for this would be, I don't know how they convey it, but Jessica dressed as Liz, or Jess and Steven with Mr. Stern, appropriately named, who is the like kind of decider of who gets the scholarship that would enable her to go to Interlaken, like doing some kind of pranky stuff.
Yeah. Mr. Stern would never appear on the cover because he's just too minor character. But yes, I think Jessica and Steve, I'm just saying, in my experience, I don't think we'd see him there.
I sometimes take you giving me guidance and facts as you judging me, and I would like to take a step back, Robert, and say, Pardo wasn't judging you for thinking that Mr. Stern would be on the cover. She was helping you to think about who might be on the cover in the future.
You're right. Thank you.
Thank you for helping me. He's not going to be on the cover.
I think this cover's funny, and I don't know, as a kid, it's just...
What in the what? Okay. So we do, eagle-eyed readers will note that Switzerland does show up on the cover, thankfully. But it's in a poster in the corner of Liz's room, which, of course, we absolutely never actually hear, see, or talk about. Like, there's no moment where Liz is hanging up the Switzerland poster or anything, is there?
No, but there is reference to a picture that she's looking at and talking about with Jess or Enid that does sound like this. So I imagined it as that when I was reading it.
So we've got Liz at her desk at a typewriter. Is she typing? Absolutely not. Is she reading what she's typing? Absolutely not. She is staring up in what might be construed by some as wonder, but to me looks almost like determined and almost angry at this poster of Switzerland. Jessica is in the background, so much of her head on her fist, kind of looking at Elizabeth in a kind of frustrated and conniving way, I would say. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, the only slight differences I interpret is like, I don't see Elizabeth necessarily as angry. Determined, focused, yes. Jess, conniving, perhaps also maybe contemplative, like, because she's in a thinker pose. When I initially see it, I read it as like she's scheming how to stop Elizabeth. But it could also be her contemplating, how am I going to survive if I don't have Liz for that long, you know? She doesn't necessarily have so sneaky face. So it could be both, which I like.
Yeah.
One other observation. First of all, this cover always stuck out to me as a kid because it's so unusual in the covers, particularly the like regular editions, to have so much actual detail of a space, like objects, like a room with stuff in it. Like we never see a room with stuff in it. We never see
a poster on a wall is wild. Like a wall is wild, actually.
Yeah. And
Great
so
point.
like it just was like, whoa, they're really letting us in. And this one, they're really showing us these girls have rooms with stuff. And it's like a desk, like, and now I'm looking at it being like, Elizabeth's desk should be a little more organized. Like it looks a little messy. Like I can't identify all these objects and papers and pamphlets, but it looks a little bit. I'd like it to be a little tidier. Thank you.
Yeah. I also was confused because wouldn't the paper is lying down very limply? And when I think about typewriters, I picture the paper. No, maybe it is lying down limply.
It doesn't really look like a typewriter. It looks like, I don't know, but assumed, like, I guess I just don't know what typewriters look like. Because I think there probably was a way that
Yeah.
that would be. I don't know.
Unlike finding out the spelling of interlochen, finding out what a typewriter looks like in 1987, very easy, no microfiche needed.
That's all I got for the cover.
Okay. Are you interested in kind of engines and boats?
Of course. Oh, to remind our listeners, go to our Instagram at Sweet Valley Hive if you want to see the cover of the book. Yeah, let's get into engines and boats, by which we mean if you're only joining us on this episode for the first time.
Welcome. First off, welcome.
It is our drawing on one of oh my God, I almost just called you Andrew. One of Robert's undergrad professors.
I thought you almost called me Angeria, which I loved.
One of Angeria's undergrad professors who used to say that the first paragraph is the engine that drives the boat, and now that's what we say.
And to be clear, of course, I do not think that she ever said that boat part at all. It's just what we say.
No,
and
I added that on.
Angeria would be a very good nickname for me. Call me Angie. 2.0, bitch. Jessica Wakefield could barely contain her excitement. Look, you guys, she hissed, peering through a pair of new binoculars she had borrowed from Randy Lloyd, ? Her latest admirer. Do you see that surfer out there in the waves? The big blonde with huge muscles? Enid Rollins and Jessica's twin sister Elizabeth exchanged amused glances. It was late in the afternoon and the three girls were sitting on the beach, enjoying the Southern California sunshine and catching up on the latest gossip. Or at least Elizabeth and Enid were trying to catch up. Jessica was making conversation practically impossible. Anytime Enid or Elizabeth started talking, she interrupted them as she spotted another gorgeous surfer.
When Jessica, I think it was book 9 potentially, when she was with the guy who was helping her with math and she started the computer hacking.
Of course.
That guy was, I think, Randy, but I feel like I want to say that was Randy Mason. So I feel like we could have two different Randys that are both potentially nerds, or like.
Are they
nerds.
And brothers or not brothers?
I don't know.
I expected Randy Lloyd to be a much bigger character in this book, and stupidly, I actually thought the gorgeous guy with the huge muscles was also going to feature in this book. Neither one does, but at all. Disappointing.
You would think Randy Lloyd's going to be part of the B plot or something because we're being set up for it. I mean, I would imagine in one of the coming books, there's maybe something where Jessica uses him for, like, I don't know.
Looking forward to it. I love using men.
I have a little bit of analysis. Okay, really quick. There's a thing in linguistics called deixis, which basically has to.
What'd you call me?
Deixis is like the concept, but the actual ones are called deictics. So there's that. So like singular deictic. Anyway, it has to do with type of language where you need to know aspects of the interactional context in order to understand the meaning of the word. So for example, pronouns like the word I. You can understand the denotational, what does it mean definition of I, which is like the person who's speaking, but you need to also know who said it in order to know what does I refer to. Right?
I am a deictic. I am a deictic. Easy to
remember. Exactly. Perfect. You are a deictic.
So you is a deictic, but
you is a deictic. That's funny. So another example is this and that. Like if I would say I liked this book, not that book, you would have to know, was I pointing at one? So I do think there's some interesting symbolic deixis work happening here that is actually a little bit robust and relevant to the rest of the text, which is this. The tool of the binoculars. What do binoculars do? They bring something that is out of reach within reach. Without the binoculars, Jessica can't see these people. It brings them within her horizon. This book is about two people, Winston and Liz, both experiencing a fantasy come to life. A fantasy turned into reality from what? Money. This book is about, in Elizabeth's case, how the possibility of a scholarship is going to get her access to this world that previously is only a fairy tale dream fantasy and so on, right? Winston, vis-a-vis a lottery ticket, is, for a while he thinks going to have also a kind of dream come true and a bringing of a fantasy near.
I love that.
Thank you.
I mean, that's brilliant. I'm really, really interested in that. I thought you were going to go in a different direction, which is less brilliant, but still potentially useful, which is just like what are binoculars a tool of? They are a tool of surveillance. And so much of this book is actually about surveillance and about like the home visit, about whether Elizabeth is worthy, and the idea of Winston, like, does someone know? Will anyone see if I've done this or not?
Yes.
So I think the deictics are working kind of in both ways there. What were the deictics here, though?
Oh, so initially when Jessica's talking about the surfers, she uses distal words.
Mhm.
She says the surfer out there. Okay? But then on page 4, she says, this is really terrific. Look at this place. A beach, palm trees, gorgeous guys, the mountains, da da da. Who could ask for anything more than Sweet Valley? So it's like she starts with the distal, which means further away, which is that. And then she's describing the exact same scene, but she uses the proximal words, this, right? And then what happens next? Enid says, well, haven't you noticed Liz is halfway to Switzerland as we speak? So, you know, introducing us to though her body is present, the mind is distal. And of course, as usual, we are seeing Elizabeth not being present, existing only in a fantasy. It is
Unbearable.
how she operates.
I think we're both right. So we got those deictics to start us off. Did you do any work with Tender as the Night at all, or no?
So basically, it says that she read Tender as the Night, and that made her decide that she loves the idea of Geneva and the idea of Switzerland. And it is interesting that she takes some of her inspiration of fantasy of being a writer from like these American male writers that is a little bit feeling of like rugged individualist American myth kind of thing. This idea that she's going to go out there and get her inspiration and she's inspired by Fitzgerald, just that in general. The actual themes of Tender in the Night, I did look at what it's about. I never read it. I saw some stuff about incest, some stuff about a mother wound,
Useful.
mentally ill woman, neurotic. That's the only connections I made.
Yeah,
You?
I didn't do much. I haven't read it myself. Not a reader. But it's not a happy book. Like it's weird that they picked this as like, why not just like Heidi or something? Like we're in the Swiss Alps, we're spinning around, we've got our hair braided. Like Tender as the Night is about like an alcoholic, like the main guy, Deictic Divers, waiting, pause for laughter, I guess, is an alcoholic and his life like descends into ruin, and his wife, like it's really sad and bad and not good, not happy.
I mean, I guess one thing we could take from that is like, it's the romance more than the reality of things. Like Liz is more the excitement versus like what's actually going on she's not looking at, kind of. I don't know. So Enid and Jess basically trying to express their questions or whatever. And the whole time Liz is so hell-bent on it, right? Like she's so sure that she wants to do it. And I just wrote, who's buying this? Liz didn't even want to go to New York for 2 weeks because it was like too big a deal. The idea that she's gonna run off and go to the Switzerland thing, like it's just so out of character that it feels like a stunt. It feels like she doesn't necessarily plan to do this, but she wants maybe attention or whatever she wants. I also have a theory that she maybe is passively trying to get Jeffrey to dump her. Because I think part of this is like she wants out with Jeffrey.
That's interesting.
I could tell you I have some supporting evidence for it, but
yeah, no, I mean the book, there's it's there.
Yeah, and also from previous books, I think we get some lead up to it. But so yeah, it's just feels a little ridiculous.
Yeah, it's very confusing what she can say. She literally says, I can't really explain why I feel the way that I do, but I just know I have to go there. And it's just like kind of confusing to me.
It's sort of like how, you know how Jessica, in a lot of books, we've seen her sort of role playing different versions of adulthood or different fantasies of like being the lawyer or being the this or the that. It's like Elizabeth, I think, is trying to perform this romantic idea she has of a writer, an American writer who feels a connection to some other place and gets inspiration that way. And that's what that narrative is. And she's sort of just trying to play that out or something.
It's very confusing. I mean, I guess it is part of that identity development and like the kind of trying to disambiguate herself from her twin and trying to kind of figure out what the future holds. It's just like so weirdly out of character. It's just very strange to me. The other thing, when I think about going to Switzerland and being inspired to write as a young woman, I don't think of Tender as the Night and Deictic Divers. I think of Mary Shelley and Frankenstein. It was like, she's like, oh, I'd be so inspired by Switzerland and the Swiss Alps and stuff. And I was like, yeah, like the same thing that birthed Frankenstein. It just feels very...
Yeah, it does feel real to me though, that something about the like her being inspired by or modeling herself after male archetypes feels right.
That's sad.
At least at this time, maybe.
Yeah, I can hear that.
Also, like, the whole thing feels especially ridiculous. Her reaction to Jess of like completely ignoring what Jess is saying, because literally 2 books ago, she like lost her absolute shit how full on Menti be because Jessica dyed her hair black.
Yeah.
And it's like, that was too much, making them be alienated as twins. She's going to go move away for 14 months or whatever. And like to the other side of the world, not the other side of the world, but like, yeah, the other side of the world. And like, does not give 1 second's attention to how that might be. Oh, sorry, one more thing. Also, like when Stephen did his stunt with the Bellefleur, which if anyone doesn't remember, Stephen, the older brother, like acted like he was going to go work on a cruise ship for a while. And then everyone was like, whatever. And then he decided not to. But like a big thing with that was that Stephen didn't talk about it with his girlfriend Kara or like ask her how she felt about it. He just sort of like announced that he was doing this and assumed everything would be the same with her. Liz and Jess and everyone observed that was really weird and like not how he should communicate. But then in this book, Liz does the exact same thing to Jeffrey, where she just makes this announcement to everyone that she's doing this, like doesn't have any conversation with him about the implications for the relationship or ask his feelings about it, and just assumes they're going to be fine.
I agree.
And even though, as Jeffrey rightly points out, you and Todd had such a hard time doing long distance, and that like didn't work out because it was long distance. So like, why do you think this could work? And there's this amazing part where she's like, oh, but that was different. Like, we'll be fine. And then it goes like, besides, she didn't want to think about that pain with Todd. And I'm thinking, ooh, she has more pain thinking about her breakup with Todd than she does thinking about leaving Jeffrey for a year and a half, which is causing her no pain. And like something going on. And
yeah, there's something the milk ain't clean, as my friend once said. And I do think the directness with which they reference the Todd stuff is really interesting, because she explains it away by saying she doesn't want to think about it and it was different. And then she also says at one point, well, I'd be just going away for a year and a half. And with Todd, he was moving away forever. And so that's why we had to break up. And it's like, this doesn't make any sense, honey. Like,
no, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense at all.
And what do we do if you're not going to listen?
We get what I believe is our first named Mexican restaurant in San Fernando, a tiny town midway between Sweet Valley and wherever Stephen goes to college.
So I have a problem with this, which is they act like all the time the Wakefields and Stephen meet halfway in San Fernando so that Stephen doesn't have to come all the way home. A, we've never heard of San Fernando, even though Stephen's been in college for a long time. And B, like, Stephen's home all the time, so don't tell me that you're always going to San Fernando. You aren't. But I am happy that Pedro's gets a name. I mean,
agree.
And I mean, I'm sure you were also waiting for it. Alice makes no mention of how the Mexican food has all the little bits chopped together. I was like, wait, like you were so into how Mexican food is all chopped up tiny. Now it doesn't even merit a reference, Alice?
You're right. Well, they've got a lot to talk about this time, so she doesn't need to kind of fill the air.
True, I guess.
Jess and Stephen literally say one thing about like not thinking Liz should go away to Switzerland, and the parents are like, don't tease your sister. Stop talking about it. They don't let them have any conflict. They literally just silence the whole conversation.
And the way that Ned sounds this conversation is he says, I think all of this is contingent upon too many ifs right now. Why don't we wait until we have a little more information before we get so excited about the whole thing? And I was like, that feels to me like bad parenting.
Yeah, why? Like, it's okay. I understand the idea of like, you don't need to make a decision until you know if you've been accepted or whatever. So, but like talking about it and understanding how she's thinking about it and people raising questions or feelings like is a normal thing to do.
And if we just say, oh, it's all too uncertain, let's wait until she gets in, and then she gets in, you haven't had any of the prep work conversation. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
um,
It was funny, Jessica, some of Jessica's comments about Europe, she says Europe
Yeah.
has really had it. It's completely decaying over there, Liz. Funny.
we're at the movies. Winston again talks about how he has no money and sets up this get rich quick party. Liz notices that Jeffrey's being so quiet, and she hoped he wasn't upset about anything. No further thought about this. No introspection. No, like, what could Jeffrey be upset about? I'm going to Switzerland for a year and a half. Like, it's pathological.
I got a little thing about just Winston. Yeah.
You know, I've got a soft spot for Winnie. I'm going to let you go.
Winston has always represented like always in a very satirical way, though, like a proletariat. Okay. He's always agitating for the lower class and like a redistribution of wealth. In the previous book, he was satirizing the elite Bridgewater ball, saying, oh, we're going to have a poor people ball. And he's always sort of back and forth with Lila about this type of stuff. In this book, we get the usual kind of Winston Lila joking class conflict at the beginning. I always read this as he basically believes these things and he's also funny. But this book made me think that there may be actually more going on. And I think there's a lot of evidence for it vis-a-vis like his actual very, very real class anxiety and economic anxiety and potential even. There's a line that says like a bunch of Maria's allowance went to keeping him full. And it's like, I think supposed to be on the surface read as a joke, but it's like, well, that they're telling us that that's the case. Why? Winston's family can't afford to keep him full. And some of his binge eating and all this obsession with food that he has, which I previously read as potentially eating disorder, I'm now reading as potentially evidence of like food insecurity in the home. For example, how excited the mom is to watch the lottery announcement and see if he actually won. I do think there's evidence that there is actual economic anxiety or like actual economic need for him that he kind of masks with this humor. And that adds a lot of complexity to what happens when he has won this lottery or thinks he's won or whatever it is.
I absolutely agree. And then we have this like, what's it called when you gaslight yourself?
I guess gaslighting yourself.
Yeah, because Liz is just like full on delusional. Elizabeth was certain that deep down, Jeffrey really felt the same way she did about the Interlochen school. She was sure he really wanted what was best for her. It occurred to her that she might have made a mistake by not emphasizing how much the year abroad meant to her. From then on, she would be sure to talk about the school and the writing program much more often. She could show Jeffrey all the brochures she had received and emphasize how much the program meant to her. This is so lacking in empathy and perspective taking as to be the kind of thought process of an 8-year-old.
Yeah, and could then also, like, it could be read as her just being so oblivious, so in denial, so ignoring reality. And it could be read as her doing that partially in order to facilitate. This is her way of passively sabotaging the relationship, kind of. There's been so many books where she never makes him priority. She like screws him over again and again. She makes up all these stories and then avoids him because she's made up some fantasy that he's cheating on her. She's done that like 10 times already. It's like she's always, it feels like trying to get out.
I hear that. I see that. As we move into chapter 3, we get the jacket switch to which I alluded earlier. We get him actually winning the lottery. He wins $25,000. Do you have a guess at what $25,000 is worth in today's buying power and money? Basically 70 grand.
Non-trivial amount.
Non-trivial. So we get the cut. I love this thing that you were saying about the binoculars and the deictic and the moving close and far, and because we get a cut from Winston winning the lottery to Elizabeth receiving the Interlochen materials. And it feels like so much of a lottery to her.
And it's an amazing, amazing cut because it starts with, I can't believe it. And you think Liz is saying, I can't believe Winston won the lottery. No, she's saying, I can't believe my mail arrived.
Yeah.
Can I just say a couple of things about what happens at Drake's convenience store, the jacket switch?
Sure.
So Winston and Maria are having this, I think, very telling conversation about like, isn't it nice that we're both ordinary and we're not
Yeah.
rich? And Maria's like, I can't imagine living that way. Honestly, Winston, all kidding aside, I'm really glad you're as ordinary as I am when it comes to money. I think it would be a little creepy being able to buy anything you wanted. Winston pretended to look grieved. Does that mean we can't buy any cheese puffs? He demanded. Soon the two had burst out laughing. They pretended to fight over pretzels or chips. So, like, first of all, a few things here. Number one, she's saying something serious and then he makes it into a joke, which could be deflecting anxiety. Two, then they do this play acting of pretending to fight over which to buy, i.e., we can only afford one. So they're sort of play acting that they're quote unquote poorer than they are potentially. But then also, like, the fact of the mix up of the jackets, like they see this guy, right? And he can't buy cookies for the granddaughter. And Maria goes, it's so unfair that he can't afford it. And Winston's like, oh, he doesn't look poor to me. Like if he was poor, he wouldn't be shopping at Drake's. What does that mean?
Yeah.
He is a reflection of Winston. Winston is saying, I can't be too poor because I shop at Drake's. And the fact that they have the identical jacket produces anxiety in Winston because, of course, the other guy's jacket is wearing more thin and his sweater's more stretched out and he ends up looking shabbier. But the fact that the jackets are the same and they both look at Drake's means, oh, so am I poor? Like it's the difference making, right? It's the, if he's me, I'm him, that stresses him out.
And I think it gives some rich complexity to whether Winston gives the money back or not. Because in many ways, Winston is thinking about like, what would that money do for him? And when he says that, he's really kind of thinking on some level, like, when I am a grandfather's age, what would that money do for me if I were still living this kind of precarious existence?
Well, and it also, I think, sets up one of the questions of the book, which is like, what is fair in terms of distribution of wealth? Maria starts off by saying, isn't it unfair? This guy can't buy the daughter cookies. And Winston doesn't know. He sort of questions. A lot of what goes on in the book is like, what makes Winston getting this money fair? Is it if he purchased the ticket? Well, then he goes into the ticket office and he's like, well, what would happen if someone didn't purchase it, but they just found the ticket? And they tell him, oh, it's whoever's in possession of it. So he's like, oh, shit. So technically, even according to the rules of this, it's actually legit. This is actually mine because I found it. So it's like, okay, well, then is it fair? And then ultimately his instinct says no. So then he gives the money to the guy. So is that fair that this guy should only be able to pay basic living expenses because he got a lottery ticket? The same way that like, oh, it's not fair that Liz was like sabotaged from Jess and Steven to not get this scholarship. So it's like this whole thing of like merit versus need. And then what does merit even consist of? So only virgins should get scholarships? Like none of it's fair.
It's also interesting that she immediately jumps to, she says, see what I mean, Winston, it's so unfair. But the last thing that she was talking about was like, see what I mean, was the thing about
Creepy.
It's creepy to buy whatever you want. And I think she's not all the way there, but I think she's getting closer to like that language. I think it's creepy. Like that doesn't actually make any sense. But I think what she is kind of getting closer to is understanding the inequitable distribution of wealth and the fact that like the wealth of the super wealthy is only possible because of the impoverished masses. And this idea that she's saying like it's unfair, it's creepy. She like recognizes if you can buy whatever you want at any point, there's some kind of exploitation or some kind of wrongness there that she can't even name yet. She can only label it as creepy.
Yes, I love that. And I love the specific of the word creepy. I feel like that's so perfect because it is like what someone who is vaguely feeling something, but it's not like creepy means like something feels vaguely wrong.
Yeah.
But also, is it the unfairness or is it also guilt? Is the creepiness the guilt of having to then encounter people who can't and the burden of that, which potentially might have to do with why Winston ultimately gives up the money? You know what I mean?
I will point out that when I highlighted he was carrying a navy blue jacket, which looked a lot like the jacket Winston had on. I highlighted and was like, they're going to swap jackets. This is the B plot.
Pascal's jacket, yeah.
And can I tell you what I thought was what I thought was going to happen is he gets the jacket. It turns out he was right. That guy wasn't actually poor. There's a wallet with, there's like tons of money in it. And does he keep the money or not? Which makes more sense than like the illogical, he wins the lottery.
Oh, that's interesting. But that's a completely different story.
Oh, that's a completely different story. Man.
Yeah.
That's not the story.
Yeah. On the dikes is an interesting moment where so Liz gets the packet in the mail.
Mm-hmm.
And Jessica looks at the package. Look at all those stamps. It looks like they sent it from Mars. The stamps are a physical index of the distance, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so Jessica reads that as not only indexical of the distance, but also like alienation. Like it's not just that it's coming from far, but it's from Mars.
That's smart. Keep talking. I'm going to pee.
Well, then what happens is they're talking about the scholarship, and we learned that the woman the scholarship was named for, Margaret Stern, was a talented young writer who died prematurely of a terminal illness. The Stern family set up the scholarships in her name. Applicants should have a demonstrated ability for creative writing, female between the ages of 15 and 17 from California, convenient. They must show courage, persistence, dedication, charisma, uniqueness, nerve, and talent, and an involvement in community affairs. And Jess teases Liz about, oh, I'm frustrated because you're obviously such a wonderful candidate for this. And I wrote, justice for Barton names, because if we remember from book 9, Roger was running in the Barton Ames, the memorial race, and we never learned who Barton Ames was, and we just had to abandon him. And Margaret Stern gets a whole paragraph. And so the Stern family set up the scholarship in her memory. Oh, Robert's back.
So I hate to be kind of mommy move along, but we do have 8 minutes.
Okay.
So we get introduced to the scholarship.
I told them about it. I already told them about the scholarship.
Oh, thank God. Did you tell them about the brand sponsorship with Oreo? There's a lot of like, we're eating Oreos. We twist the top off an Oreo. It's like, okay, we get it. You're paid for by Oreo.
No, but I did write down Diet Coke.
Yeah.
I think we've seen Diet Coke before, but that was another Diet Coke.
Where are you? Do you get to a passport to chaos, which is what we call Jessica's room, which I thought was very clever, and like passport Switzerland, very good.
Yeah, that was good.
One of the things I do like about these books is they invoke things. So they invoke Liz and Todd in the breakup and how that's similar to Liz moving to Switzerland. They invoke Stephen getting on the cruise ship. Like they're like, hey, reader, in case you're missing things, here are some things you might find interesting.
Yeah, I liked that too. Chapter 5?
Sure. People start calling Winston Big Win, which I love.
Big Win.
Because it's, Winston win, but also like it's his big win. I thought that was great.
And this is all about how like ever since he's won the lottery and it was like announced and everything, everyone's treating him different, even his parents. And everything has gone topsy-turvy. And what's interesting, I think, is there's a description of the way people are reacting to him, and it seems sort of aggressive and obnoxious, like they're slapping him on the back and demanding to know this, and Lila's being all fake with him and all of this. And you're thinking he's going to be like, oh, like, I guess it's actually not good, the attention that goes along with this. But it doesn't say that. It says, well, he couldn't even enjoy it because he was feeling so guilty about this. And I'm like, so he would enjoy it.
Oh, we would enjoy it.
Right? So
Winston and Robert would enjoy it. We're very similar.
But again, this is revealing of like I think all of this reveals that like his whole identity of like money doesn't matter, and it's all a joke, Like he wants the money, and he actually also likes the status that goes with it.
Oh yeah. So we can make fun of Lila because we want Lila to be Lila, not to love Lila.
Yeah. And then we get the explicit connection of the parallel of what's going on with them when Winston and Liz have a conversation about, wow, look at us. We both have had our dreams come true and now we're famous in the school or whatever.
Winston goes to talk to the old man, Mr. Oliver, realizes he didn't know he won.
For some reason, because the guy didn't know he won, which how could he have known? Winston's like, okay, well, I'm not going to tell him. So this like defers it longer.
Because we need a book. And
of course, his house is in the poorest part of Sweet Valley. I also wanted to note that Winston talks about how the home shows charm and hominess despite being run down, and that every effort had been made to make it look nice despite how poor. And again, I think this shows the like quote unquote merit thing. It's like, oh, if he puts effort despite his circumstances, does that mean he's more deserving, you know?
It's also just like sweet and beautiful. I love Mr. Oliver. I was actually hoping Winston and Mr. Oliver get together and share the money.
Again, with like class gray areas, like he says that if he had money, he would use it to send his granddaughter to a horse riding camp, which seems like a pretty luxury thing. So that also raises questions of like, I don't know.
I disagree. I don't disagree.
I'm not saying poor people shouldn't get to go to riding camp and
that is what you said.
Spend money on riding camp. But I'm saying it's interesting that they chose that example to like drive home the, you know what I mean? It's weird.
Sure. Classic part.
No, poor people should always go to riding camp.
Poor people must go to riding camp. Elizabeth is lizzing out because there's this unbelievable, and I mean not like literally, it's strange credulity. So to get this scholarship, she applies, she sends 3 writing samples, and then there's a competitive home interview portion where Mr. Stern, who is the grandson or whoever of the scholarship person who determines who gets the money, and an alumna of Interlochen, interview Liz and meet with her family and friends to determine her character and whether she has the appropriate character for the scholarship. Unreal. So the big thing is that Jess and Stephen submarine her and sabotage her and make it seem like Liz has a terrible family. And then Jess has this moment where she's like, wait a minute, if they realize Liz has a terrible family and was still able to accomplish all this stuff, maybe they'll want her even more. I was like, wait, so Jess actually understands how gross this character test is. On some level, kind of.
She's trying to assess what ideology is Mr. Humble coming from.
Right.
Yeah.
Enid explicitly says to Liz, have you thought about, like, I'm so upset because I don't want you to leave? And Elizabeth goes, that's pretty selfish. It seems to me that part of being a best friend is wanting what's best for the other person.
It's so annoying.
She's so annoying. But then Enid gives it right back and says, I'm not even convinced that Switzerland is the best place for you. I can see how exotic it all sounds, but would it really inspire you? And I'm like, yeah, I think good for Enid. And it's hard to stand up to your friends.
It's a fair question. She's also so good when Liz is being so fucking neurotic and controlling and trying to coach her for this interview that the guy's gonna do. Like, Enid's like, you need to relax. Like, you're losing your sense of humor. Like, yeah, I can talk normally about you, you know? Winston wants he wants to be sort of forced to give it back, worried he's going to get caught or doing something technically wrong. So he like goes to the lottery place or calls them like, hey, out of curiosity, I'm just wondering, like, what happens if someone wins, but they didn't buy the ticket or it wasn't theirs? And they say like, well, we can't control that. So it's just whoever's in possession. He's like, oh.
I guess it's all mine. So why do I feel so terrible at the whole thing?
In chapter 8, I have only one note that I need to say.
Oh, the hot guy, Kirk Anderson?
We get introduced to Kirk Anderson, who's hot, but also like we explicitly get Liz thinking about that she might want to date other people. So she's thinking to herself like, oh no, like I hope Jeffrey's not cheating with Enid, but is he going to still sit at home away from me if I go to Switzerland? And she had to admit that she sometimes wondered what would happen if she met some glamorous European boy at Interlochen, someone who could take her skiing, and it's like, we also must remember that in Spring Fever, she had a budding romance. Yes, it went nowhere with fake Brad, but she was also being a little bit conflicted about her feelings for other people.
Is there an aspect of Liz's boarding school dreams that are also kind of class anxiety and status climby? Like, she wants to meet some European man who takes her skiing, which feels very class marked. And I do wonder if some of this is like, I think I deserve more than this shitty school that we, like the public school we're all going to. I want to be in the rarefied air of Interlaken and Switzerland.
100%. And it's because it is exclusive. It is described as exclusive, and her admission would be exceptional. She, by the normal norms, doesn't have access to it because her family can't afford it. You know, only by having exceptional merit and this special scholarship can she get access. So it's inherently, yes.
Yeah. A competitive scholarship, ...
I also want to remind us that in Too Good to Be True, when they were at the airport waiting for Suzanne Devlin to come from New York, and they talked about how Suzanne Devlin had gone away to boarding school.
Yes.
And Alice was like, I would never send my kids away while they're still, like, I think kids should stay at home until they're finished high school or whatever. And we made a bunch of jokes about how, oh, Stephen, like, you shouldn't be at home anymore and like this and that. I also think there was some like implicit class anxiety of Alice being like defensive on that. But it also, I think, gives some context to some of the conversations that the parents have, like, is consistent with how they felt back then of like, oh, I don't want you going so soon, maybe, or like, let's just talk about this. I think the only other thing in that chapter, Liz and Alice have a conversation, and
Alice is a good mother, honestly. Alice
she gives her good
pushes advice and is like, you're clearly upset, talk to me about it, gives good advice.
Is like, don't make up fantasies about Enid and Jeffrey cheating, and don't decide how Jeffrey feels about stuff. Like, why don't you actually talk to him?
Good advice, a rarity.
I did laugh at like part of the sabotage of the home tour is Stephen goes on this whole thing when Mr. Stern, the guy coming for the home visit, Stephen's like, yeah, like, I'm home from college. We're all just basically so codependent. We just need each other so much. We can't be apart. I'm like, that is how you are. And now you're making it a joke. Don't you see that that's real?
But I want to talk about both of the ways that they sabotage. So Jess puts on a leather mini skirt and a gold bandeau top and a lot of makeup. It must be said, she already owns these clothes. She already wears makeup. She may be dialing it up a bit, but she is being herself. And Stephen may be dialing it up where he says, we all get lost unless we keep in constant touch. Like, he's dialing up but their way of sabotaging is not to lie. It is only to exaggerate themselves. And I thought that was really telling to, like, in some ways speak to their own. Is it their own anxiety? What is it that, like, Liz thinks she deserves this because she is so exceptional and she has exceptional merit, and they're submarining her by showing who they really are to some extent. Is there something?
Yeah, and maybe trying to point out something real, which is you're actually ashamed of us.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
You're trying to be something you're not. Right? Because like she's trying to control how they express themselves, which if they just express themselves naturally, they would be their real selves. So by her trying to tell them to do other than that is her telling them like, you're not good enough, but I am. So they're naturally offended by this, I would think.
Yeah. That gives a little more richness. I dislike this book because of the anxiety, because it made me feel like, I think that Jess and Stephen act truly abhorrently, and it's really gross, and it made me feel really bad the whole time. But I have a little more empathy with this kind of newfound enlightenment around, or newfound understanding around, like, maybe they're feeling rejection sensitivity, maybe they're feeling hurt and being asked to be something they're not. Their behavior is still super gross. One of the things is just having a motorcycle at the house. Having a motorcycle at the house is enough to make them look bad. It's very stupid.
The slut stuff is really crazy. Like, so basically what happens is first they try to sabotage Liz by like getting Stephen to make a bunch of phone calls when Mr. Stern's going to hear, like, pretending to be different guys. And,
but
like,
he only does it once, which is
and
weird.
then they're like, when they escalate and they're like, well, that's not enough because like maybe they'll still think she's good enough. And Jessica decides to impersonate her. Then she like basically comes on to Mr. Stern and says one of the craziest lines ever. Love does not recognize the word appropriate.
Oh my God.
Mr. Stern's like, young lady, you're being extremely inappropriate. And she says, love does not recognize the word appropriate. I thought you would understand that. Aren't you European? He's like, no, I'm from California. I have the trust fund or whatever.
She also like talks about
how her goal is to marry Swiss Baker.
Well, she talks about marrying a Swiss banker. She talks about So Stern says, oh, Collins gave you like the best recommendation we've ever had. And she's like, oh, he's so darling. I'm madly in love with him. He's so gorgeous. It's just like, this is uncomfortable.
I love when, can we go to chapter 12?
We must.
In chapter 12, Liz confronts them. She like figures it out, whatever. She's upset. And she's like, and she tells Jess, like, you sneaked around. And Jess goes, I may have pretended to be you, but I never sneaked.
I love that too. I highlighted that. I did not sneak. Then Elizabeth has this big, crying, boring shit where she's like, I guess it never occurred to you that this is my dream and I've always wanted to do this since 20 minutes ago when I first heard about it 20 minutes ago. And they're like, wow, we were really bad. We need to fix it.
And then, like, at the same time, Jess and Steve decide to confess to Hummel, and Winston decides to confess to poor guy, Mr. Oliver. And I do just want to say that the trigger for Winston confessing, right? He's been going back and forth this whole time. And at the end of the previous chapter, he's talking to his mom, and in the abstract asks her for advice on a moral quandary. And she says, he doesn't tell her exactly what it is, but she says, you see how funny life is? I bet most of your friends think you haven't got a care in the world now that you've won the lottery. And here you are looking as though the weight of the world were resting right on your shoulders. Winston didn't answer. Suddenly, he knew that there was only one way to handle his problem. I thought that was so interesting.
Tell me more.
What is the trigger? It's the burden. He wants out of the burden. Like, you would think the trigger is going to be some moment where he sees Mr. Oliver not being able to afford something, or something reminding him of something that Mr. Oliver can't have, or the like. But it's the weight that's on him. Do you know what I'm saying?
That's interesting. That is a compelling and beautiful reading. That's not necessarily the reading that I had. I was kind of noting he has recognized the weight himself. He knew it. He knew that he wasn't being happy to be famous and whatever. For me, it is his mom noticing the weight on him rather than the weight itself. Where it's like, oh, I'm being dragged down, but this is actually having negative consequences. Like, people around me are noticing, and it's like hard for my mom to see me this way.
Oh, interesting.
And so if this is going to wreck me to the point that it wrecks them, I don't want to do it.
That's interesting. Yeah. I do think he does want to be famous.
We all want to be famous.
Well, all right.
Winston goes to give the money back. It's very, very sweet. You'll be happy to know, little mommy miser, that not only is he sending Lisa to camp, but he's also going to help her parents with their car getting repaired.
I know.
It's not just luxuries.
I know. I was going to mention.
You updated your spreadsheet for how poor people spend their money.
He tells Winston he's the finest young man he's ever met and that he's a hero.
I made a big hug, and I was just very moved. We get the resolution of this. We know from behind the scenes that Jess and Stephen were going to go talk to Mr. Stern, but we're home and Elizabeth is screaming at Jessica and Stephen. Jess is crying. Mr. Wakefield's like, I don't know what's going on. Can someone please explain it to me? Stephen starts to, and then the bell rings, like the doorbell rings. People famously
love to show up at a door.
And Mr. Wakefield cries, I want everyone to stop yelling for just 1 minute. I'm going to answer the door. And when I come back with whomever, incorrect grammar, is there, I'm going to ask you to explain very calmly and one at a time exactly what's been going on around here.
So, like, I had to read it 100 times. It makes no sense.
I'm going to go answer the door. There's going to be someone there. Whoever it is, if it's an Avon lady, if it's a Tofu Glow salesperson, if it's Mr. Stern, if it's, the ghost of
Trisha Martin,
may her memory be for a blessing. I'm going to bring them in with me, and we're all going to sit down and you're going to explain this. All of us to this.
Crazy.
What?
It's so crazy.
It's also it's like, what you would say is, I'm going to send whoever that is away, and then we're going to figure this out.
Yeah, or just, hold on, someone's at the door, I'm going to get it, and then we'll resume this conversation later. Like, whatever. You don't say, literally, regardless of who that person is, which could be anyone in America and beyond, they're going to be part of this conversation, which is happening immediately. It's crazy. Okay. Hummel tells Liz, you actually got accepted because of Jess and Steve confess. Liz says,
which is just unbelievable. I mean, all of it is just like,
no, it's disgusting.
Okay.
Right? It's disgusting. It's crazy. And then she finds out about Jeffrey Enid's scrapbook. They all make nice, and she comes back and gives a big speech about how the inspiration she wanted was right here at home, right in front of her all this time.
She then, in front of everyone, gives like an Academy Award winner's speech. You've all been very patient with me for the past few weeks. I guess I owe every single person in this room a big thank you. And I thought that was going to be it. First, I want to thank Enid for reminding me what a real friend is. I guess a friend is always a reminder of home. And that's what Enid is to me. Then she turned to her family. Then she bought, it's like, the fuck?
Well, she's like, okay, she basically did a very quick calculation in the kitchen where she was like, this is my moment. This is it. This is my moment.
Have it.
And-
Have it.
Yeah. So there's a picture of Winston in the newspaper. Lottery winner claims he's not rightful owner of winning ticket. And the subtitle says, generous boy proclaimed a hero by owner. And Lila says, how is that boy ever going to get anywhere with that kind of confused value system? I should have daddy send him to one of his cutthroat business seminars. But I think it's very important that Winston's like, well, now you can call me the moral king. He gave the money back and he is now still leveraging this whole thing as an opportunity for attention and praise.
And I think it's so important to note that morality is equivalent to starch. Moral king, starch king, that is, as you would say, I would say, you would say, you would say, ideological.
I wouldn't say it in that case, but I would say, you would say, I would say, you would say, I would say it.
The other thing that what's interesting about Lila's, so Lila says she wouldn't have given the money back, which is, I mean, she's rich. She doesn't need to keep the money. And it's an interesting, I feel like, potential moment where it's like, oh, this is how the rich stay rich and keep the rest of us under their thumb.
I think that is supposed to be what it means. Yeah,
like that.
and highlight her greed. Yeah.
And then we get kind of the resolution of all of that, which is Mr. Oliver and Winston are going to throw a party on the beach next weekend for all of their friends.
That's very cute.
It's an intergenerational lottery bang. It's amazing. And then we're basically at cliffhanger, right? So Lynn Henry suggests a new personals column. And the Oracle has decided it's going to run its new column. They're placing ads in the cafeteria. Dateless, mateless, don't be sad. Run an ad. Just pick up a form from the Oracle office and look for love the modern way.
For the Gen Zers, a personals column is old-timey internet dating when it was in a newspaper.
It's like asynchronous Tinder.
Yeah. Well, Tinder's already asynchronous.
It's even less synchronous. I mean, yeah, Tinder is asynchronous, but it's like...
Okay. It's on paper. Paper comes from a tree.
Trees, of course, are kind of like, they're green at the top, but they're brown kind of towards the bottom.
They're like kale, but taller.
And you can't like eat them. So they're talking about who will do it or not. Jessica giggles, better not let Winston advertise. He'd probably get a response from, of course, the only celebrity woman named in any of these texts, Brooke Shields.
Brooke Shields.
He'd get a response from Brooke Shields and then give her back, claiming he'd gotten the wrong person's date. Lila leaned closer to inspect the poster. Do you really think it'll work? Who's going to come right out and admit he can't get a date on his own? Jessica and Cara exchanged glances. Jessica couldn't help agreeing with Lila on principle. On the other hand, though, who could say what the response from their classmates would be? Only one thing was certain. With the first personals column coming in a short time, things were certainly going to get exciting at Sweet Valley High. What couples will find true love through the Oracle's new personals column? Find out in Sweet Valley High number 39, Secret Admirer. I am hoping for a romp, for a love fest, for some unexpected matches. I mean, maybe Randy Lloyd shows up again. Maybe something else happens. But I want something to happen.
What's interesting about this cliffhanger, I think, is like usually we'll be introduced to a storyline or a character, and it's like what's going to happen to them. This cliffhanger introduces us to like a device, and we have no idea who's going to be happening in these columns. It's what
we call a global cliffhanger. It cliffhangs for everyone. We are all on the edge of that cliff. A global cliffhanger. Any other final thoughts?
Nope. I think we can go to you telling our listeners that if they have a friend who can't stop staring at a brochure, tell them, why don't you put something in your ears while you stare at a brochure? Send them our podcast and tell them they must also rate and review it.
And if you have a friend who is always, always, always playing the lottery, even though the odds are not good, you should say, don't worry about winning that lottery. You've already won the podcast lottery if you just listen to Sweet Valley Hive.
That's right.
Thanks for listening to Sweet Valley Hive, hosted by Robert Marks and Rebecca Pardo. For more, check out our Instagram at Sweet Valley Hive. Theme song by Yessie and artwork by Elliot Carroll.